Welcome, dear listener. Tonight, we journey across time and tide to a quiet village along the coast of Edo-Period, Japan. Here, the days are soft, the sea speaks in whispers, and life flows like a gentle tide. As you settle into rest, let the rhythms of this quiet place carry you into calm. There's no need to stay awake. The story will keep drifting whether you listen, dream, or sleep. Dawn over the village. The day begins. The sea is still when the sky is at its softest. Before the sun stirs from behind the mountains of Honshu, the air is hushed and clean, cool with salt and the lingering memory of night. The sea, gently breathing, laps the edges of the inlet with rhythms older than memory. Above, the first shades of light are neither night nor day. A pale indigo blending into the faintest silver, soft and unassuming. It is in this liminal hour that the village begins to wake. The village itself is modest, a handful of low wooden homes set just above the tide line, their rooftops dark with thatch or wooden shingles weathered from years of salt-laden wind. Paper shoji screens still glow faintly from the inside, some lit with lanterns left burning through the night, perhaps for elders who stir early, or for the spirits who prefer not to fumble in the dark. A rooster calls once, not loudly, but as if simply clearing its throat. A dog pads across a dirt path between houses, alert but unhurried. Somewhere, the door of a Kara storehouse slides open with a wooden whisper, and footsteps, barefoot, deliberate, pad across the veranda of a small home near the shore. It is the home of the fisherman, one of many in this place. He is not young, though not yet old, and his life is marked by the sea in quiet ways. The lines at the corners of his eyes from squinting into sunlight on water, the calloused hands rough with net fibers, the deeply tanned skin across his arms. He moves slowly as he dresses, wrapping a faded indigo kosode around his body, tying it at the waist with a simple sash. His clothes smell faintly of sea brine and smoke from the hearth. Before stepping out, he folds a tenugui cloth and ties it gently around his head, half for ritual, half for practicality. His wife is already awake. In the dim light of the Aurori hearth, she stirs the morning rice with a wooden paddle. The steam curls upward into the rafters, and the smell, earthy and soft, is the first real scent of the new day. She moves with grace born of repetition, no motion wasted. The iron kettle beside her hums as water heats for tea, and outside, her husband's footsteps creak gently on the plank walkway as he steps down to the earth. Along the shoreline, other figures begin to emerge. Some stretch their arms overhead, shaking off sleep. Others squat beside basins, splashing water onto their faces, blinking at the coldness. There are no sharp sounds here. Even waking is a careful, slow act, like walking into a dream already in progress. The fishermen gather loosely along the dock, near their boats which rest quietly in the gentle tide. These boats are not grand vessels, but modest wooden skiffs, their hulls oiled and darkened with use. Oars are already laid in place, nets neatly coiled, stones and shells tied to their edges to help them sink properly into the current. A few men speak in low tones, discussing weather, tide, the dreams they had. One laughs softly at something said, but there is no urgency in their voices. As light seeps more confidently into the sky, the outlines of the hills become clear. Mist clings stubbornly to the trees beyond the village, wrapping itself around trunks and branches as if reluctant to leave. On the water, a thin veil of morning fog hovers low, kissed by the first peach-colored light of sunrise. It is quiet beauty, not meant to be admired loudly, but simply to be received. From one of the nearby homes, a child peers from behind a screen door, rubbing her eyes. She watches as the boats begin to push off, one by one, gliding slowly into the open water. A moment later, her mother gently draws her back inside, whispering something only the two of them hear. Now the village has thinned. Most of the men are on the water, their backs bowed to the rhythm of the oars. Each stroke is measured and patient. The sea accepts them, rocking each vessel in a slow cradle. Gulls circle overhead, their wings beating silently in the stillness. Farther out, the boats form loose constellations, each man heading for his favorite spot, some near rocky outcrops, others toward deeper, darker blue where the tide runs strongest. Back on shore, the day continues its quiet unfolding. The women emerge next. They tend to the small gardens behind their homes, pulling weeds from narrow furrows where daikon and scallions grow. Others shake out straw mats, sweep verandas with long brooms, and set out baskets to dry in the rising sun. Their work is gentle and cyclical, like the sea itself. A girl carries a jug down to the stream that runs nearby, filling it carefully, watching minnows scatter as she disturbs the shallows. Her sleeves are tucked up neatly with small ties, and her geta clacks softly on the stones as she walks. In the distance, a bell chimes once, a soft gong from the small temple that sits on a rise behind the village. The priest there has already made his morning offering of incense and chant, and now sits cross-legged on the wooden platform, gazing down at the water through half-closed eyes. A few elders sit together under the overhang of a porch, drinking the first tea of the day. Their movements are unhurried. One man smooths the creases in his kimono with slow palms. Another fans himself gently with a folding fan, not because of heat, but out of habit. They speak rarely, content in the shared rhythm of long lives lived in the same tides. A cat walks the length of a low garden wall, tail high, stopping now and then to sniff the air or glance with lazy interest at the sparrows pecking in the dust. Somewhere nearby, the thud of a pestle echoes softly as a woman grinds roasted soybeans into flour. The smell is warm and toasty. It drifts past open doors, mingling with the scent of miso soup simmering in clay pots. Children gather near a shallow stream where small stepping stones cross the water. They do not run or shout, but giggle quietly as they float leaves like tiny boats downstream, watching them swirl around pebbles and disappear. An older boy gently corrects a younger one's footing, guiding his sandal from a slippery stone. No one rushes. The morning has only just begun, and there is time for everything. Near the shoreline, the sun now climbs visibly. The fog retreats, lifting like a dream releasing its hold. Nets laid out to dry begin to glisten with dew, their fibers glinting in the gold of the morning. Wooden buoys bob softly, casting long shadows across the sand. A lone fisherman's wife stands at the edge of the water, squinting out to sea. She does not wave, nor call, but simply waits, her gaze following the shape of a boat growing smaller in the distance. And as the village moves gently into the full light of day, the tempo remains unbroken. There is work to be done. Fish to salt, rice to rinse, wood to chop, but none of it yet. For now, the warmth of the sun wraps around the homes like a blanket, and the sound of waves against wooden hulls echoes faintly back to shore. This is not the beginning of a story. There are no heroes here, and no great deeds to come. There is only the slow unfurling of a life repeated, day after day, in tune with the sea and the wind and the sun. The fisherman will return in time, his boat heavier, perhaps, with the day's catch. He will step onto the sand, speaks softly with his wife, rinse his arms in the shallows, and rest a moment in the shade. But that is for later. For now, the day is new, and the sea is calm, and all things move as they should. The morning outing, fishing at sea. The sea does not speak loudly in the morning. It whispers in small lapping waves against the wooden hulls of the boats, in the creak of oars resting in their locks, and in the soft breath of wind that drifts across open water, light enough to barely disturb a strand of hair. It is in this silence that the fishermen find their rhythm. By now, the village has faded behind them. What remains is a gentle blur, a collection of dark roofs, a scattering of trees, and the occasional white flutter of laundry or banner in the breeze. It is distant and still, like something remembered from a dream. Ahead, the water stretches wide and unbroken, the sky above it pale and vast. The boats, narrow and low, glide quietly through the shallows. Their hulls are handcrafted from local cedar or pine, sealed with layers of natural resin and polished smooth from years of gentle wear. Each plank was chosen carefully, each joint fitted with purpose. These vessels are not grand ships, but humble, reliable companions, built to hold man and net, and the quiet hopes of sustenance. In one such boat, a fisherman rows steadily. His movements are practiced, neither hurried nor slack. He rows not with power, but with harmony, his breath in tune with the rhythm of the oars rise and fall. Water clings to the blades as they lift, sunlight catching each droplet in glimmers of gold. With each stroke, the boat slides forward, parting the surface of the water like silk. He says nothing. There is no need. In the still morning, sound travels easily, too easily. A single voice can ripple across the bay, disturbing birds from their nests, or startling a fish just beneath the surface. And so the men speak little when at sea. Instead, they listen. They listen to the lap of water against the hull, to the gulls that circle, calling softly, to the deep silence beneath them, a silence not empty, but full. Beneath the surface of this calm sea, there is a world unseen. Schools of small silver fish moving in unison, larger shapes gliding slowly along the bottom, strands of seaweed drifting gently like underwater meadows. The fisherman glances at the sky. There are signs he has learned to read, subtle shifts in cloud, the temperature of the breeze, the color of light as it reflects from the water's face. He dips his fingers into the sea and tastes the salt, not because he must, but because he always does. It is tradition, a way to begin, a quiet exchange between himself and the water. Today, he heads eastward, toward a familiar stretch of deeper tide. The current here is slow, but steady, just enough to carry the net without tangling it. The boat slows, coasting now. He rises to his feet carefully, knees steady, bare toes gripping the smooth wood of the deck. From a coil beside him, he lifts the net. It is handmade. He wove it himself during the last winter, sitting by the hearth while snow piled softly outside the walls. The net is delicate in design but strong, weighted with small stones tied at intervals, each one carefully chosen. As he casts it, the net opens in midair, spreading like a paper fan in slow motion before settling onto the water's surface with a gentle hiss. It sinks gracefully. There is no splash, only a faint resistance, as if the sea accepts it without protest. He sits again, now waiting. The waiting is never wasted. It is part of the work, part of the rhythm. He sits still, leaning slightly forward, eyes scanning the surface. His hands rest on his knees, one thumb gently tapping in time with his breath. The boat drifts slowly with the current, the sun climbing higher. Its warmth spreads across his back, a slow, steady heat that feels almost human. He closes his eyes for a moment, listening once more, not just to the sea, but to his own stillness. In another boat, not far away, a younger man does the same. His hair is tied back in a loose knot, his net not yet cast. He waits, watching the first man, as if learning by quiet observation. Between them floats a heron, neck arched, standing on a rock barely visible above the surface. It too waits. Time slows here, not because it must, but because it can. A dragonfly lands on the edge of the boat. Its wings shimmer in the light, translucent and fragile. It rests for a long moment before lifting off again, spiraling into the blue. The fisherman begins to draw on the net. There is no urgency. He pulls slowly, hand over hand, coiling the wet rope carefully as he works. The net rises with a quiet sound, water dripping steadily from its seams. At first, it appears empty. Then movement, flashes of silver, the subtle shimmer of scales. He smiles, not broadly, just enough to crease the corners of his eyes. The fish are small, but many. Sardines, mostly tiny, gleaming bodies flipping gently in the mesh. A few anchovies, slender and fast. He gathers them into a wooden basket beside him, lining it with fresh seaweed. Each fish is placed with care, not because they are rare, but because they are not. They are the gift of the morning, and they deserve that kindness. He casts again, farther out. Another man tries his luck near a cluster of rocks. He stands carefully, steadying his balance as waves slap gently against his hull. His net arcs through the air, glinting like thread spun from glass. He hums a tune under his breath, an old song, inherited from his father, and his father's father before him. A song not meant for performance, but for company. Above, the gulls cry softly, circling once, then disappearing toward shore. Sometimes, a school of fish will shimmer just beneath the surface, a ripple of silver that catches the light like a secret signal. When that happens, the men move silently toward it. No shouting, no pointing. Only a shared understanding, a shift in or strokes, a nod between boats. If the fish escape, they do not curse. If the net comes up light, they do not grumble. The sea gives what it gives. The rhythm is more important than the yield. By mid-morning, the boats begin to turn. The sun is higher now, the sky a pale, brilliant blue. The sea has warmed, though still gentle. In the distance, the village has sharpened in detail. They can see the movement of women along the shore, smoke rising from cook fires, a child waving from behind a basket. The tide is shifting. It is time to return. The oars dip again. Each man rows slowly, not because he is tired, but because there is no rush. The baskets are filled, not a bursting, but enough. That is the goal. Enough to eat, enough to trade, enough to salt and dry for the leaner days ahead. Enough for the quiet pride of provision. As the boats glide homeward, the gulls follow, not in flocks, but in gentle escort. One or two drifting high overhead, casting soft shadows across the water. Closer to shore now, the men pass familiar markers. The jagged rock shaped like a turtle's shell, the cove where sea cucumbers hide, the tall reed that always sways even when the air is still. These are not grand landmarks, but quiet friends. The boats reach the inlet. The tide carries them gently toward the sand, where others wait. The fisherman's wife is already there, standing at the water's edge, holding a shallow basket lined with woven straw. She says nothing. He nods once as he steps from the boat, water rushing over his feet, toes sinking slightly into wet sand. He lifts the basket from the boat, setting it into her arms with care. Together, they begin the slow walk back toward the village, nets slung over one shoulder, the sea quietly sighing behind them. And though the morning outing is over, its rhythm lingers. In the swaying of the seaweed drying on racks, in the smell of fish roasting gently over charcoal, in the creak of the boats tied once again to the dock, bobbing with the same gentle motion. It is a rhythm older than any one man, older than the village itself. It is the rhythm of tide and net, of oar and breath, of silence and return. And it will come again tomorrow, just as softly, just as surely. The village at midday, domestic life and community. The sun is high now, but not harsh. It filters down through a veil of slow-moving clouds, casting a golden hush over the village below. Shadows have shortened, curling closely beneath the eaves of homes, the broad leaves of garden plants, and the wicker baskets laid out to dry. Midday in the village does not arrive with fanfare. It drifts in, quiet and weightless, like steam rising from a bowl of soup. Along the winding paths between houses, the village exhales. The work of morning has ebbed, giving way to a gentle lull. This is not a time of idleness, but of quiet continuity. Chores done with soft footsteps, voices lowered without thinking, hands moving steadily through tasks passed down over generations. In the kitchen of a modest home near the center of the village, a woman tends to the day's fish. She is neither old nor young, her hair tied back with practiced ease, her sleeves secured with loops of cloth at the elbow. The scent of brine and charcoal clings faintly to her clothing, and her hands are wet from rinsing the fish, which lie glistening on a wide wooden board. With a slender knife, she slices carefully along the belly of a sardine. Her movements are slow and deliberate, not out of weariness, but because this is the way it should be done, without haste, without waste. The sliced fillets are laid on a bamboo rack to dry, the skin shimmering silver in the light. She sprinkles coarse salt across them, each grain catching the sun like tiny beads. There is no need to look at what she's doing. Her hands know the way. Nearby, her daughter helps to stir a pot of miso soup set over the low flame of the hearth. The steam carries with it the smell of fermented soybean and seaweed, a scent that says home in a way words cannot. She drops in cubes of soft tofu, watching them bob gently on the surface before slowly sinking. Then adds sliced green onions, their bright green edges curling in the heat. Outside, the village paths are busier now, but not hurried. A woman walks slowly with a basket balanced on her hip, filled with daikon, greens, and a small pot of fermented plums. Another carries firewood in her arms, stacked neatly against her chest. Her geta clack gently against the dirt path with every step, the rhythm soothing and steady. She nods to the women she passes, a soft bow of the head, nothing more. The language of this place is mostly unspoken. A group of children sits on a stone ledge near a well, playing a game with stones. They take turns flipping flat pebbles onto the ground, trying to land them in small hand-drawn circles. Their laughter is light and controlled, the kind that rises and fades quickly, like leaves caught in a passing breeze. One child drops his stone too early and misses the circle entirely. The others giggle, not unkindly. A moment later, it's his turn again. In the shade of a small open-air shed, two elderly women shell broad beans into shallow wooden trays. They work in companionable silence, occasionally exchanging brief comments about the weather or a dream one had the night before. Their hands, though slow, are certain. The beans fall with a soft, pleasing sound, one after another. The pile grows gradually, green and plump. Further down the path, Near a quiet corner of the village, a man repairs a basket. He squats low, the curve of his back forming a gentle arch as he threads strips of bamboo into place. His fingers work methodically, reshaping the weave, testing for give, adjusting where needed. Nearby, a half-finished pile of reeds soaks in a shallow basin, softening in the sun. Beside him, his wife sits cross-legged, darning the hem of a cotton robe. The two do not speak, but every few minutes, one will pass something to the other without looking: a tool, a needle, a sip of tea. A small garden lies behind them, where young scallions stand in neat rows, their tips swaying in the breeze. Thin poles tied with bits of white cloth serve as scarecrows, not to frighten, but to gently deter. A black butterfly floats past, its wings slow and deliberate, as if it too respects the stillness of midday. In the center of the village, the temple bell is rung once more. A single, soft note, long and low. It hums in the air for a moment, then fades. A priest steps out from the wooden shrine, his robe simple, the color of damp straw. He bows once toward the sea, then returns to the shade of the veranda, where he begins to rake the small gravel garden. Carefully, precisely, drawing long, sweeping lines that echo the tide's own brushstrokes upon the sand. Back in the kitchens, lunch is being served. Not all at once, but in pockets, households following their own rhythm. Steamed rice, gently scooped into lacquered bowls. Pickled vegetables in shades of pink, white, and green. A slice of dried mackerel, grilled to crisp perfection, its skin blistered and golden. Each element is placed with care. The meal is modest but satisfying, built not on abundance, but on intention. In one home, a grandfather takes his place at the low table. His granddaughter brings his tea, bowing slightly as she sets it down. He smiles at her with eyes that have seen many such meals, many such afternoons, and she beams back at him with the unspoken understanding that comes from shared life, lived slowly. The room is filled not with conversation, but with the gentle sounds of eating. Chopsticks tapping lightly against bowls. Soup being sipped, a quiet mem of approval. The sound of wind against the paper screen. And then, when the food is gone, the soft clack of dishes being cleared and rinsed. Outside, the sun begins to lean westward, and with it, the mood of the village shifts again. The lull of midday will soon yield to the soft stirrings of the afternoon, of nets to mend, of buckets to carry, of errands and idle visits and small repairs. But for now, there is stillness, the moment between breaths, the pause between tides. In one yard, an old man dozes on a wooden bench, his straw hat tipped low over his face. The shadow of the house stretches over him, cool and protective. A cicada sings from somewhere nearby, not loud, just steady. A chicken scratches in the dust beside the path, head bobbing, wings fluttering slightly as it settles into the warm earth. Two children pass with a toy, a hoop rolled with a stick, wobbling across the path as they chase it, giggling but quiet, their feet light. Their shadows run beside them, long and playful. Even the dogs nap now, curled in spots of sun like lazy brushstrokes on the canvas of the day. From above, the entire village seems to exhale again, a slow, shared breath. Roofs warming under the sun, gardens soaking in the light, wells still and glassy. The sea, visible beyond the farthest houses, remains calm, a great mirror cradling the sky. There are no alarms here. No loud clocks, no urgent chimes. Time moves according to its own soft rhythm, known best by the sun's position and the feel of air on the skin. Midday is marked not by hands on a dial, but by the scent of broth in the breeze, the feel of sweat on the brow, the length of a shadow on the floor. And so, the villagers continue their quiet rituals. A mother braids her daughter's hair, strand by strand, careful and slow. A young man walks the path to the edge of the forest, carrying a bucket and a small blade, seeking wild greens. An old couple sits side by side, listening to nothing in particular, yet sharing everything in silence. This is the heart of the village, not the boat or the fish or the tide, though those are sacred too. But this, the space between tasks, the comfort of routine, the soft warmth of midday sun filtering through a bamboo fence, the laughter of children that never quite rises and never quite stops, the smell of earth and charcoal and green things growing. As the sun continues its patient arc across the sky, the village prepares to stir again. Afternoon is near. The nets will be examined, the boats checked. The marketplace will hum with gentle conversation. But for now, all is slow. All is simple. The fish caught earlier lie drying in neat rows. The firewood is stacked. The tea is still warm. And the village, like the sea beside it, breathes softly in the glow of midday. Afternoon rhythms, maintenance, and marketplace. The sun, now leaning westward, takes on a warmer hue. Not harsh, not hurried, but amber, softened by the slow accumulation of day. Its rays stretch gently across the rooftops and gardens, reaching long fingers toward corners that had remained cool in the morning. Shadows begin to lengthen. Their edges are not sharp, but feathered, like brushwork from a painter who prefers a quiet, unfinished thought. The village, too, begins to shift again. The midday lull lifts, gently, like a curtain stirred by a breeze. There is no signal, no bell, no sudden call, just a natural stirring, a slow return of motion to the small rhythms of tending and preparing, of mending and exchanging. Along the shore, the boats rest patiently, tied to their moorings with thick hemp ropes. The sea laps lazily at their sides, content for now. Their morning's labor is done, but the work around them is not. One by one, the fishermen return to their boats, not to cast off, but to care for what has carried them. This, too, is a ritual. A man in his 40s, quiet and methodical, kneels on the wooden deck of his vessel. He carries with him a small bundle of tools, a mallet, a chisel, a wooden wedge. His eyes scan the seams of the boat, looking for gaps, or splinters raised from salt and sun. Where he finds them, he works, tapping gently, smoothing, sealing. Each stroke is light, respectful, as though he is tending not to an object, but to a living companion. The boat rocks gently beneath him, and he adjusts his weight with ease, accustomed to this balance. Nearby, another man spreads his nets across the shore, their weight stretching them long and flat. He inspects each knot, each tiny square of mesh, for signs of wear. When he finds a tear, he threads a needle made from bone and begins to repair it, weaving the fibers back into place with careful loops. His daughter sits beside him, passing him twine, handing him weights, asking quiet questions. He answers without looking up, his tone soft, the conversation meandering like a stream. Along the edge of the village, bundles of firewood are gathered from where they were set to dry. Some are carried to homes, others to the small bathhouse where steam will soon rise from the roof. A boy, no older than 8, carries a bundle too large for his arms, leaning backwards slightly to balance it. His mother watches from the doorway, neither laughing nor scolding. She knows this is how strength is built, not just in the back, but in the will. The road that leads to the small marketplace is dusted now with footprints, The mark of sandals and wooden get pressed into the earth like scattered brushstrokes. A gentle breeze stirs the fabric banners that hang from wooden storefronts. They bear the characters for rice, miso, sake, salt. Simple signs, offering simple things. Their cloth is faded by sun and age, and that fading is beautiful. The marketplace is not large, just a clearing between buildings, ringed with small stands and shaded by canvas and paper. The sound here is hushed and low. The shuffle of sandals, the murmur of greeting, the soft clink of coin. People do not shout or haggle with raised voices. Instead, they exchange things quietly, as if each trade were a small story being told. At one stall, a man sells dried seaweed, its deep green sheets folded neatly like paper. He speaks softly, explaining the best way to steep it for soup, how to store it for moisture. A woman listens, nodding occasionally, selecting her pieces with care. She leaves behind a bundle of dried persimmons as payment, wrinkled and sweet, wrapped in rice straw. At another, an elderly couple offers pickled vegetables, stacked in earthenware jars. Their hands move slowly, lifting lids, selecting pieces with wooden chopsticks, setting them into wax paper pouches. The scent of vinegar and salt hangs in the air, sharp but pleasing. Children pass through the square, carrying errands. One clutches a coin in a damp fist, repeating the name of what she must buy like a mantra. Another delivers a basket of fish to the tofu seller, who accepts it with a nod and places a soft, pale block of bean curd in return. Not far from the stalls, a man sits cross-legged with a shamisen resting across his knees. He plucks its 3 strings gently, not to perform, but to pass the time. The tune is slow, meandering, like the movement of clouds across the sun. A few people pause to listen, not because they must, but because the music asks nothing of them. Beyond the market, along a narrow path that follows the curve of the coast, others tend to quieter work. A woman kneels at the edge of a tide pool, gathering sea lettuce and small crabs in a shallow basket. The water here is clear, the rocks warm beneath her knees. Tiny fish dart between her fingers. She works in silence, her sleeves tied back, her wide hat shading her face. Beside her, a boy helps by holding a bucket, watching the movements of snails with solemn fascination. Further inland, at the edge of a wooded glade, another group gathers wild greens. Fuki and warabi, soft and bitter, prized in soups and stews. Their baskets fill slowly. They speak in low voices, noting the signs of foxes nearby, the bend of a tree that wasn't bent before. Nothing is wasted. Even the stories they tell are collected like herbs. As afternoon stretches on, the wind shifts slightly. It carries the smell of salt and wood smoke back into the village. At the communal well, women fill buckets and rinse vegetables. They speak of the day's work, of laundry yet to be done, of a neighbor's new baby and the temple's fading roof. One woman has brought a small comb and braids her daughter's hair while the others smile. The girl sits patiently, eyes closed, trusting the gentle tug and twist of her mother's fingers. Near the shrine, a monk sweeps the stone path with a fan-shaped broom, his strokes long and meditative. He pauses now and then to greet a passerby with a bow. No sermons are given, no incense burned just now. His presence is quiet, like a stone in a river, unmoved but always touched by the current. By late afternoon, the light begins to deepen again. It becomes rounder, richer, filled with undertones of amber and bronze. It touches everything: the bamboo fencing, the hanging cloth, the curve of a clay pot, with a painter's attention. Shadows stretch longer, more confident, and the world seems to glow without shining. A woman dusts the front step of her home, not for cleanliness alone, but because it is what one does in the hour before evening. A man gathers kindling for the night's fire. A child sets a candle into a hollowed-out turnip, ready to light when the sun dips low. Back at the market, the stalls begin to close. Goods are packed into baskets. Coins are counted quietly. Final greetings are exchanged with nods and soft laughter. The shamisen player sets his instrument aside, stretches his legs, and yawns into the dusk. And all around, the village exhales again, not in fatigue, but in readiness for the next rhythm, the next breath, for the meals that will be shared, for the fires that will be lit, for the stories that will drift like smoke into the dark. The sea, too, prepares. Its tide tugs gently against the shore. Its voice lowers to a hush, and the sky above begins to turn its colors, muted pinks and honeyed lavender melting together, fading upward into a softening blue. The village watches, not with awe, but with familiarity. They have seen this sky before. They will see it again tomorrow. And still, it is beautiful. Evening glow, shared meals, and lantern light. Evening in the village arrives not as a sudden drop, but as a long sigh, a breath released after a day well lived. The light softens until it no longer illuminates, but embraces. It slides across rooftops in liquid strokes, pools in the hollows of the earth, and lingers on the edges of wooden doors. A quiet hush settles upon the lanes, not of silence, but of comfort, of something familiar returning once again. From one home, a thin stream of smoke rises from the kitchen hearth. Then another, and then another still. It is the hour of warm rice and simmering broth. The hour when families gather beneath thatched roofs to eat and to speak, to rest hands warmed by the sea and soothe backs bent by labor. The meal is not merely a necessity, it is a ritual, one that has changed little over the generations, and that will change little in the ones to come. In a small wooden house near the water's edge, a woman stirs a pot suspended above a clay hearth. The fire beneath it crackles softly, throwing a gentle glow upon her face. She stirs slowly, rhythmically, watching as flecks of miso melt into the dashi broth. Kelp and bonito flakes steeped into something savory, something round. Into it she places small cubes of tofu, sliced daikon radish, and a few strands of greens gathered earlier that afternoon. Steam rises in soft ribbons, carrying with it a scent of nourishment that curls out through the window into the evening air. Her eldest daughter fans the embers, careful to keep them low and even. Her youngest shapes rice into small triangles, pressing them gently into form with salt-dusted palms. Each one is placed with care onto a small wooden tray. She hums as she works, an old lullaby, wordless now, but familiar. In a nearby home, an elderly couple prepares their own supper. He slices pickled cucumber and burdock root with deliberate precision, his hands still steady after all these years. She spoons steaming rice in lacquered bowls, wiping the rims with a cloth before placing them on a low table. Neither speaks much. They do not need to. Their movements speak for them. Outside, children gather in small clusters, lanterns in hand. They have lit them from a shared flame. One passed gently, carefully, from wick to wick. The paper lanterns glow like tiny suns, floating across the village paths. The children laugh in quiet tones, voices high but gentle, respectful of the hour and its softness. Some carry carved vegetables, turnips hollowed out and etched with patterns of leaves and waves, illuminated from within. Others have lanterns painted with animals or seasons, or with simple strokes of ink in the form of clouds or birds. They walk slowly, taking long detours, not in a rush to return home. Their footsteps patter on stone and earth, the flicker of their lights dancing across bamboo fences and painted shoji screens. A father, kneeling on his porch, watches them pass. His hands are stained from the day's catch, but they rest now in his lap. He smiles, not broadly, but with that deep, steady affection that needs no expression. He calls softly to his son, who returns with a bowl of warm water. Together, they wash his hands, one pouring gently, the other scrubbing with a soft cloth. The water darkens, then cools, and is poured out onto the earth beside the porch. A small thing, but this too is ritual. Inside, the family gathers. They sit on woven tatama mats, legs tucked beneath them, bowls placed in neat rows upon a low table. There is rice, of course, always rice. There is miso soup, warm and fragrant. There is grilled fish, tiny sardines today, caught fresh that morning and seared until their skin crisp just slightly. There are pickles, bitter and sour and sweet, their colors bright against the soft grain of the bowls. They bow their heads together and speak softly in unison. Itadakamasu, a word of thanks, not only for the food, but for the hands that prepared it, for the sea that offered it, for the land that nurtured what grows. Chopsticks move quietly. Children eat with care, stealing glances at their parents, imitating the pace and the pause. Between bites, conversation flows, gentle, winding, with no particular destination. They speak of the catch that day, of the new shrine bell in the neighboring village, of the sound the wind made in the pines earlier that afternoon. In another home, a grandmother tells a story as the meal is eaten. Her voice is soft, worn smooth by repetition and time. She tells of a fox spirit who lived in the cliffs beyond the cove, who could change shape and once turned into a fisherman's wife. She speaks slowly, pausing between lines to sip her tea. The children listen with wide eyes, though they've heard the tale before. That is part of its comfort, not surprise, but the warmth of knowing what comes next. Outside, lanterns are being hung from beams and branches. They sway slightly in the evening air, their light golden and gentle. Moths flutter near them, attracted not only by the glow, but perhaps by the hush of it. From the direction of the shrine, a soft bell rings once, then again, not to summon, but to mark time, a gentle reminder of the turning world, of the slow passing of another day. The monk tends to a small brazier, its coals glowing like embers from a dream. He sets down a slip of paper with a verse of poetry written in brush and ink. The lines are brief, about wind, or a bird, or the feeling of dusk. He does not read it aloud, but lets the paper speak for itself. As the meal ends, bowls are gathered and washed in warm water. A daughter rinses each one twice, once in soap, once in clean water, and sets them to dry on a bamboo rack. The chopsticks are wiped and returned to their resting places. The table is brushed clean with a cloth that smells faintly of citrus peel. The act is not rushed. It is an extension of a meal, not an ending, but a fading. Afterward, families gather once more, this time not around food, but around quiet light. In one home, they unroll a painted scroll on the wall. It shows cranes flying across a river at sunset. The lines are soft, spare, but expressive. The children trace the forms with their eyes. The father speaks a few lines of poetry to match it, his voice slow and low. In another, a mother unpacks a small basket of calligraphy paper. She sets it down beside her daughter, who kneels at the table and dips her brush into ink. The tip touches the paper with a delicate pause. She writes a single character, "You," meaning evening. Her brush rises. The ink settles, a story in one breath. In some homes, an old lute-like instrument, the biwa, is taken down from its shelf, not for performance, but for memory. The father plucks a single line again and again, its sound round and full, like raindrops on a roof. He hums softly, then stops. That is enough. The village grows stiller now. The sound of waves is louder, or perhaps just more noticeable now that other sounds have faded. The wind shifts, cooler now, passing through trees and around eaves, through the tiny bells that hang from the corners of roofs. They tinkle softly, like distant laughter. Fires burn low in their hearths. Some are banked for warmth. Others are allowed to die naturally, their embers glowing like coals in the chest of a resting creature. The last of the lanterns flicker, their paper skins turning the light inside them into something almost like thought. Soft, dim, and persistent. Shadows stretch not away from them, but into them. Children are washed in warm water, their hair wrapped in cloth, their feet dried gently. Pajamas are not separate garments, but older robes, softer from many washings. They climb into futons laid out on the floor, layers of cotton and straw, woven for comfort, for sleep. Mothers tuck them in with quiet hums. Fathers sit nearby, reading softly from an old book or telling a story without pages. Not dramatic tales, but quiet ones. A turtle who crossed a wide lake. A cat who followed a firefly too far. A rock who dreamed of becoming a tree. And then, one by one, the voices stop. Only the sea remains, and the wind, and the night. But there is no loneliness in this quiet. It is full, not empty, full of presence, of rest, of peace. The stars emerge, gentle and flickering, scattered across the sky like grains of polished rice. A moon rises, pale and round, reflected in the dark water like a coin at the bottom of a well. And the village sleeps, not all at once, but slowly, steadily, like a lantern dimming, like a tide pulling softly back toward the sea. Nightfall, the sea breathes in sleep. The night deepens, and with it comes a stillness that feels like velvet, thick and soft, wrapping gently around the quiet village by the sea. Shadows no longer move. They rest, pressed into the corners of narrow lanes, folded like cloth beneath the trees, lingering softly in the spaces between rooftops. The last voices have quieted. Even the wind has slowed, its breath hushed against the old wooden walls, whispering along bamboo fences, rustling the tall grass behind the fish sheds. It carries with it the scent of salt and wood smoke, of cool earth and distant pine. In one home, only a single lantern remains lit. It glows like a distant star through the paper wall, casting a small halo of light that flickers just slightly, as if nodding off itself. A fisherman, not yet asleep, sits cross-legged by his writing desk. The room is silent, but for the faint sound of the ink brush as it glides across the surface of rice paper. His strokes are slow, thoughtful, not rushed, nor even purposeful. He writes a line of poetry, then pauses to look at the night beyond his window. Outside, the sea is calm, so calm it looks like black glass. It breathes with a rhythm older than the village itself. The tide sighs, stretching up onto the shore, then drawing back. No crash, no drama, only the gentle rise and fall, like a mother's breathing, steady and sure. The man continues writing, a few more characters about the stars tonight, or perhaps the moon, or the way the fishing boat looked earlier, resting on the sand like a sleeping creature. He blots the paper, sets the brush aside, and blows gently on the ink to dry it. Then he folds the paper into a tiny square, tucks it into a wooden box, and extinguishes the lamp. The room sinks into darkness with a softness that feels almost intentional, as though it, too, was ready. Further down the village path, another home is entirely still. Inside, a grandmother and her grandchild sleep beneath layers of futon and woven cotton, their breaths soft and synchronized. The grandmother's hair spreads like snow across the pillow, while the child sleeps with a hand still holding a piece of fabric, perhaps a toy, or a folded fan, or a cloth with stitched waves sewn long ago. Through the open windows, night insects sing, not loudly, but with a persistence that feels like background music for dreams. The Suzumushi, bell crickets, chirp with high, bell-like calls. The Matsumushi, pine crickets, sing lower and longer. Their chorus drifts through the village like incense, curling into rooms and over rooftops, filling the space between each breath. At the edge of the village, near the water, boats rest on the sand. Their hulls are turned slightly with the tide, their shadows stretched long in the moonlight. Nets are draped over wooden posts. Their knots still damp from the day. Seaweed has been gathered and laid in bundles, tied with thin rope, ready for tomorrow's drying. But all of it sleeps now. A cat walks between the boats, silent and smooth, tail curved like a brushstroke. It pauses, looks toward the sea, then disappears into the tall grasses. Further still, past the last home, the shrine remains bathed in moonlight. Its gate, simple and worn, casts long lines across the ground. The sacred rope, twisted with white paper streamers, sways gently in the night air. There is no priest here tonight, only silence and the faint sound of the waves below. And yet the presence of the divine feels near, not grand or distant, but close, domestic even, as though the gods themselves have also turned in for the night, reclining behind closed screens, sipping warm tea, their sandals lined neatly at the door. A stone lantern flickers here, its flame low but still alive. Inside, a piece of cedar resin burns, releasing a faint, woody scent that lingers in the air. Not sharp but soothing, a perfume for the quiet hours. Beneath the great pine that watches over the shrine, an offering remains. A bowl of rice, a slice of orange, a folded crane of paper. The breeze lifts one wing of the origami bird, then lets it settle again. Beyond the shrine, the cliff edge looks out over the open water. Here, the moon reflects in a wide path across the sea, silver and endless. It is the kind of light that makes everything feel suspended, not frozen, but suspended, held in a moment that stretches gently, without end. If one stood there long enough, one might believe time has stopped, that the sea no longer moves, or perhaps that the world now floats upon it, carried slowly like a leaf drifting across a still pond. Far off, a bell rings once, not in the village, but out at sea. It might be a fisherman returning late, or perhaps a buoy struck by a soft wave. The sound is distant, hollow, but comforting, a reminder that even in sleep, the sea stirs, and the sea remembers. In the village, some dream now, of distant shores, of white sails full of wind, of deep waters teeming with fish. Others dream of rice fields they've never seen, or temples tucked in the mountains, or the taste of fruit from trees that bloom only in stories. Some dream of nothing at all, only quiet, only rest. In one small home, a woman wakes briefly. She rises not with alarm, but with the quiet rhythm of one who does this often. She pours water into a cup and drinks slowly. She walks to the porch, stands beneath the stars, and breathes. She hears the night insects. She hears the sea. She does not speak, but she listens. A shooting star crosses the sky. Just one, But it's enough. She turns and returns inside, her steps soft on the wood. She lies down again, and in only a few breaths is asleep once more. The night continues. There is no urgency to it, no shift, just slow turning, just the old rhythms that do not need to be taught, only remembered. In the sea, small fish rise toward the surface, not in hunger, but in curiosity. The moonlight draws them upward, their silver bodies flickering just beneath the skin of the water. They do not break the surface. They only linger there, like stars adrift. Above them, the sky has grown dark enough to reveal the Milky Way, a soft stripe across the heavens, full of dust and memory. Some believe it is a river. Others say it is the path of ancestors. Perhaps it is both. The tide rises now, slowly. It slides up the shore, over the pebbles, toward the edges of the village. Not close enough to touch, but near enough to be heard. A breath in, then a pause, then a breath out. The sea sleeps too, but lightly, with one eye open. As the deepest part of the night arrives, even the insects grow quieter. Their song fades, not in volume, but in pace. Longer pauses between each note, as though they, too, are drifting into dreams. Lanterns have all gone dark now. No more flickering lights. Only moon and stars, and the faintest suggestion of morning waiting, far beyond the horizon. But morning is not here yet. There is still time to rest, still time to breathe, still time to float in the space between one day and the next. And so the village continues sleeping. The boats, the homes, the people, the nets, the hearths, the stones in the path, all held together by the slow, steady rhythm of the sea, a rhythm that has never ceased. Not for war, not for peace, not for kings or merchants or maps or stories. It simply continues, as it always has, as it always will. And so the night deepens, and so it remains, until quietly, a rooster will call, the sea will shimmer again, a child will wake, but not yet. Now, there is only sleep, and the sound of waves. The sea breathes, and the village dreams. And so, the nets are folded, the lanterns have dimmed, and the village sleeps beneath a silvery moon. Thank you for resting here tonight, in a world of quiet waves and ancient rhythms. Wherever you are now, may your dreams be gentle. Good night, and sleep well.